Welcome to the third International E-Commerce Day event. My name is Albert and I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I would like to thank all of you for being part of this conference, and I would like to thank our dear partners, GetResponse, for the support that made part of this conference happen. I would also like to remind you that after the presentation of Burc, there's going to be a Q&A session where you can ask questions. I would also like to remind you that if you get any insights or quotes that you might want to share on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, then we have a competition where you could win an Omniconvert account worth $9,000. All you have to do is to use the hashtag ecomday2017. Without further ado, I'm gonna introduce Burc, which is founder and CEO of pricing. So Burc, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks a lot for the introduction, Albert. So guys, this is actually my third International E-Commerce Day presentation. So I would like to thank Omniconvert team, or with the old name, Marketizator team, for having us in all the sessions. So today I will go through, both basic and both strategic pricing tactics for all sizes of e-commerce companies. So to repeat, my name is Burc Tanir and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Pricing. So before starting, I actually would like to, see the vibe that you guys have. So I would like you to actually share your comments as where you are coming from. So where you are watching this video webinar from. So I would appreciate if you can just share your location from the comment section, your names, any questions before we start. I would appreciate if you could fill in the comment section before we go. So let me start my presentation, guys. So as I mentioned, I am the CEO and co-founder of Pricing, which is a competitor price tracking software. So in this presentation, I will share actionable pricing strategies for all sizes of e-commerce companies. So let me start with our very own company, our lovely company, Pricing. So as I briefly mentioned, it's a competitor price tracking software for all sizes of e-commerce companies from all around the world. And we are actually literally working with companies from all around the world at the moment, which is now more than 40 countries. And as I mentioned, it's really for all sizes of e-commerce companies, because we are working with very small e-commerce startups that has really just launched a day ago or a week ago, but we also work with e-commerce giants like Bauhaus or Cisco. Really huge enterprises are also using our automation. So let me start with a question, guys. So is price really everything? I will be going through e-commerce pricing in my whole presentation, so it's really important to first make sense about pricing in general. So is price really everything? Okay, it's maybe not, but 90% of online shoppers compare online product prices across shops for 10 minutes on average before buying. So 90% of your potential shoppers are really caring about your prices. So it's really, the price is almost everything for 90% of your shoppers. Another interesting statistic is that 60% of online shoppers worldwide names pricing as the most important criteria affecting their purchase decision. So it's not the free shipping, it's not free deliveries or whatever. So 60% of online shoppers worldwide names pricing as the most important criteria. And another reason why we can say price is really important is that 20% of online traffic and sales of e-commerce sites is actually being generated through CPC campaigns on price comparison engines. So basically, an e-commerce company is spending dollars, marketing dollars on, generating clicks on a price comparison engine available in its country. And 20% of its traffic and sales is actually coming from this direct price competition engine. So for such marketing budgets, you should really watch out your prices. So as I made it clear that price is really crucial, let me jump on how to polish that up then. So I will basically go through the few really well-known pricing methods in e-commerce at the beginning, and then I would like to kind of pile up all this information and deliver you the smart competitive pricing actions that you can apply out of these strategies. So I will be going through cost-based pricing, market-oriented pricing, consumer-oriented pricing, and then at the end, I will also go through a bit of psychological pricing. So let me start with cost-based pricing. So cost-based pricing is actually, economics 101 in short. So it's the most simplistic approach that you can apply in your store. So it's the crucial part with the cost-based pricing, the thing that makes it not that easy is that the cost needs to be well-defined. So the cost is not only the product cost that you pay on a unit basis to your supplier, but it also includes the overheaded webshop spending. So let's say you have an office, you have an inventory space, you are spending on marketing, and all this stuff is actually also your cost, and all this sum should be deducted, should be overheaded into your unit product cost, and then you should be charging margins on top of that newly calculated cost. So here, cost-based pricing is a little simplistic, but the hard part, the tricky part is to calculate the cost right. And on top of that cost, it's setting the desired profit margin, which depends on your market niche and competitive landscape. So if you are actually in a very, very competitive market, you shouldn't dream of profit margins like 50%, I don't know, 40, 30%. You will be, competing on very, very tight profit margins. But if you're actually on a market niche, you can really dream of such profit margins like 30%, 40%. So it also depends on your landscape. So as soon as you understand your landscape, you can then set the desired profit margin on top of that calculated cost. The drawback, the downside of cost-based pricing, actually only applying cost-based pricing, is that you can be undervaluing yourself, because here in this case, you will kind of be isolated from the market, because you will have your cost and then you will desire a profit margin and calculate a value. But unless you compare that with the market, you can just define a value which is really way below than the competition, or you can actually define unrealistic profit margins which are really higher than your competitors, so you can turn out to be uncompetitive. So the thing that I'm trying to say is that cost-based pricing is the basis, but it shouldn't be applied alone without any other insight. So let's jump on what I mean about insight. Market orientation is also crucial before making a pricing decision. So market-oriented pricing is actually starting with a question. So what is your unique selling proposition, guys? So is it value related or is it price related? This is also about your market. So are you really delivering a value that cannot be replaced or substituted elsewhere? Or are you actually kind of delivering an offer, a price, which can be compared really on tens of web shops? So you should really know what you are selling as a proposition. And then you should define where do you stand alongside your competitors. So you should be benchmarking, you should be analyzing the market conditions by also keeping in mind your costs. So cost-based pricing is best applied when you also have this market-oriented perspective. So depending on your competition, you can both decrease or increase your prices. So when we think of competition, or let's say competitive pricing in general, people always think of decreasing their prices because their competitors are charging lower, so that it should be a race to the bottom and so on and so forth. But I will quickly explain you in a short while that you can also increase your prices versus your competitors if you have the market orientation correctly and in an automated, in a smart way. And another market orientation is penetration pricing. So this is a specific pricing strategy when you initially launch your web shop. Let's say you're a new player in the market. Let's say you are retailing iPhone accessories. So you are selling stuff for smartphones, and you have a lot of competition in the market already. So in order to gain attention from your audience, you should be offering something really price related. So at the beginning, let's say for the first month or for the first 3 months, you can orient yourself versus your market competition, and then you can offer really low prices, but you can always keep this in mind that this is something temporary. So in that case, you can also apply penetration pricing while you are penetrating into markets. Another aspect, another pricing strategy, or let's say pricing mentality, is consumer-oriented pricing, which is also starting with knowing your customers. And knowing your customers, guys, is actually also knowing your market in a way. So you should know whether your customers would pay a premium for your products or your services, or are they really deal hunters? So this also starts with the product, with the unique selling proposition that you bring into the market. So if you are, for example, selling an iPhone, so, you know, guys, unfortunately, you are always dealing with deal hunters, in short. So if you are selling an iPhone, you should know that your customers can buy the iPhone from any web shop they like, depending on the price. But if you are selling something really handmade, something unique, let's say, you should know that your customers are ready to pay a premium. So you can really lift up your profit margins almost as much as you desire. And also, when we think of a consumer, we should also think about the, you know, psychology of the consumer. So in short, if pricing is a science, it's not only an economics, guys. So it's a mix of economics and psychology, which brings us to the extra strategy that I will go through, extra knowledge that I will go through. So I started with cost-based pricing. Then I stated market orientation is crucial. So you should also apply market orientation with market-oriented pricing. Then I explained that we should know consumers. And knowing about consumers is mostly psychology. So I will now go through few actually interesting psychological pricing, let's say, theories. And the initial theory is the most well-known one, which is charm pricing. So obviously, if you use nines rather than zeros at the end of a price point, you sell more. You convert much more visitors to your product profile. And it can really be dramatic as much as 100%. So if you have a price for $19.99 versus $20, even though it costs only 1 cent lower, it can really lift up your profit margins up to 100%. So if you are not really applying this, please, the only takeaway from this presentation should be this, guys. So this evening, go to your e-commerce platform, e-commerce CMS, and make sure that you turned your price points with charm pricing into nines at the end. The second theory is actually a little contradictory, I would say. So it's mostly rational pricing. So if you are selling, you know, this part depends on the product type that you are retailing. So if you are selling a smartphone or, and I don't know, a tablet, a consumer electronics product where you purchase the product with your rationale, so it's not something emotional, you just, you know, compare different specifications, different criteria, and so on and so forth, and you just make a smart, rational decision. So in such cases, in such web shops, you should be using rational prices, which is more like the first option here. So it should be more like 93.53, as if it's really calculated, versus $93, a dull number, you know, which is randomly put. So even though you don't really calculate these numbers really accurately, you can make them up as if they are really calculated depending on a certain percentage of, I don't know, profit margins and so on and so forth. So in rational behaviors, the first option here would convert much better. And in contrary, if we are selling something that we sell through the emotions of our consumers, we should apply emotional pricing. So let's say we are selling a pillow which has an emoji printed on it. So it's a little yellow pillow. You can imagine the picture. I wanted to put the picture on this presentation, but I didn't want to disturb, you know, the overall layout. So you can imagine the pillow with me now. So it's a circular yellow pillow with an emoji smiley face printed on. So while buying this product, you don't really care about the price that much because, you know, all you are after is actually to own that product, to have that product and enjoy that product rather than finding the cheapest option online. So you're not really, you know, you don't really need that product. You just kind of want to own that product. So in that case, you think less about the price points, and also you want to think less about the price points. So in order to make you think less, we should show you less about the pricing information. So the second option here tells us less about the price points. So it's only a dull $13 versus $13.07. So in such emotional product cases, we should be using the second option to convert more visitors because they don't really want to deal with different specifications information. They just want to like the image of the product. They should deal with a very simple price point, and then they should do the lovely action of adding that product into their cart and buy and go. Another theory is using smaller fonts. So this is actually a little also contradictory, but if you use smaller fonts for your price points, somehow the psychology of your consumers also detect that number as if it's smaller. this is really strange, but this actually, oh, by the way, all these theories that I'm going through are scientifically correct. So they are proven with experiments. So if any one of you would like to learn more about these experiments, about these theories, please write them down in your comments section so that I can share the particular scientific papers on those theories. So this smaller font theory actually works much better when contrasted versus a larger font as a reference price. For example, you are now having a discount from 29.99. So in case you have a discount, you should be using a huge font for the reference price from where you discounted the product. And now you should use a really small font as for the new price. So this combination is really effective when it comes to conversion rates. So use smaller fonts for your price points. This theory is actually one of the most interesting psychological theories, and it's actually little similar to this, but it's much more contradictory, I would say. So even though we don't really read the price points while buying stuff, we somehow read them in our minds, they say. So this is actually also a proven, psychological research. So if you use less syllables in a price point, the consumers also detect that price point as a smaller price point. So for example, let's compare 27.82, which contains 7 syllables, rather than 28.16, which contains 5 syllables. So since the second option contains less syllables, it's also perceived less, even though it's a little higher than the first option. So this is really, really interesting. And I also would like to share the research paper of this with anyone interested. So try to kind of mimic your users, put yourself into their shoes, and try to use numbers, price points with fewer syllables. So when we combine all these strategies, so let me go through everything that I mentioned so far. So we had cost-based pricing, market-oriented pricing, consumer-oriented pricing, and few psychological pricing theories. So these strategies are not actually mutually exclusive. So the sweet spot actually is to use all these strategies hand in hand together with a smart competitive pricing mentality. So you should be applying both cost-based pricing, market-oriented pricing, consumer-oriented pricing, and you should also add your knowledge about these psychological pricing tactics, and then you should melt them in a pricing strategy bot, let's say, and then you should apply smart competitive pricing. So now I will go through 4 killer best e-commerce pricing strategies that we have been applying with our customers from all around the world in the last 4 years. And these can be really dangerous, I would call. So they can really boost your profit margins, guys. They can really lift up your sales figures. So apply these strategies in caution, please. So maybe you should apply them all together, or maybe you should apply them separately to really detect the effects of these tests separately. So the initial strategy is actually one of the most basic things, but people are always confusing being competitive versus being the cheapest one. So the competitive price is not necessarily always losing the profits. So you should not contradict being profitable versus being competitive in the market. So if you have the right market insight, if you really are able to monitor the market automatically in a comprehensive way, you can actually notice pricing actions where you can become competitive, but also you can increase your profit margins while increasing your prices. So if you watch your costs at a product where you suddenly detect that you are really cheaper versus your competitors, you may have the chance to increase your prices for $10, $20. You can still be the best deal in the market, but for out of each and every sale that you make, you can make $10, $20 more of profits. So you can really remain both competitive and profitable. And to do that, you should have 2 strong strategies hand in hand. One is actually cost-based pricing. So you should make sure that you are closely watching your cost so that you don't decrease your prices below your operating unit costs. And then the second option is actually to closely monitor your competitor prices with a software like pricing, for example, so that you can detect the products where you can still have the option to increase your price and still remain the cheapest in the market. So believe me, this is the most important profit leverage that we have done with all our customers from more than 40 countries. So we don't force them to decrease their prices to the bottom, but we help them to lift up their prices in a smart and competitive way. The second thing is actually similar to the first one that I mentioned. So here I mentioned you that you can, you need to monitor your costs, and this is actually in identifying these price increase opportunities. So you should watch out for products where you are too cheap. So it's not really being cheaper for like $2, $3, but you can somehow notice that, an old teammate of yours set the price point for a product like a year ago, and it was like 19 back then. But now your competitors are 39, 49, so you kind of forgot to change the price point of a product. Believe me, this might sound ridiculous, but we hear this a lot. So sometimes we notice our clients are trialing our software, they're trying a product, and they are adding a product, they are benchmarking the price points versus their competitors, and then they suddenly detect that the price point of a particular product didn't change since last year. So they notice that they are 50% or 100% lower than their competitors, so they can identify price increase opportunities. Another crucial and more analytical approach is actually kind of understanding your competitors' discount habits. So if you have historical pricing information from the market, you can really spot trends. So you can notice, for example, that your major competitors always apply a discount on a particular product category on Saturday mornings. As long as you have the updated pricing information kind of piling up on a retrospective basis, you can really detect particular patterns of discounting over your specific competitors. And the best thing is actually to detect this pricing trend and then beat that with a counter attack, actually. So if you can counter attack on your competitors by detecting or analyzing their discounting habits, you can really kind of kill their game, I would like to say. So you can really be smart and analytical, drill down the historical data on a web dashboard, like pricing's web dashboard, showing you all the historical data in the market, and then you can react, you can counterattack on these major marketing actions of your competitors. And another aspect is more related with the cost side. So when you have a tool that shows you your competitors' prices, you kind of have insight also for your competitors' unit costs, right? So because since you're in the same market, mostly you will have almost similar profit margins. So one of the major areas that you could compete versus your competitors would be the unit cost that you are paying to your suppliers. So if you detect that one of your competitors are way below your price on a particular brand, this should signal you that your supplier, who is basically the same supplier with your competitor on that particular brand, is selling that particular brand at a cheaper price point to your competitor. So as soon as you detect that, you should sit down with your suppliers, with your pricing dashboard in front of you, and you should show that guy or show that woman that your competitor is really buying prices at a very lower price point than you. And then you can smartly negotiate with your supplier to kind of break that deal, or maybe to ask for the same bargain, or maybe a small, a lower bargain, so that you can also champion the unit cost for that product. So even for the same price point, you can make more profits out of the same product by simply showing your supplier that you are a smart retailer. So these 4 strategies are the kind of bulletproof, competitive, smart competitive pricing strategies that we have been applying in the last 4 years with companies from, Sweden, Indonesia, US, Australia, Belgium, whatever you imagine. So these tactics really work in any country on earth when they are applied hand in hand. So the first one was actually smart competitive pricing. So with this, you should know that you should apply cost-based pricing together with market orientation. And by doing that, you can actually identify price increase opportunities rather than fighting for a race to the bottom. So you shouldn't always be fighting for decreasing your prices to be the minimum. But when you think the opposite, you can actually identify price increase opportunities competitively. And another strategy was to identify your competitors' discounting habits by analyzing the historical data that a solution like pricing can deliver to you, like few times a day, actually. So if you detect those habits, you can counterattack, you can apply the exact same strategy, and you can break the game of your competitors, their marketing strategy, and you can kind of cheat on their marketing spending by offering the same product at an even lower price point. And another one is actually the cost side of the things, where you negotiate smartly with your suppliers by knowing that they are actually giving the same products at a lower price point to your competitors. Believe me, all these strategies have been applied and have really helped our customers to lift up their sales and profit margins. So in conclusion, pricing is not a theoretical stuff, I would like to say. So it's a tactic. So you should be really applying. So it's an applied science and art in general. And smart competitive pricing is actually the melting pot of all these strategies. And when applied hand in hand with all these tactics together, smart competitive pricing can be really your secret e-commerce marketing weapon. So I am really trying to emphasize this marketing weapon part, because mostly e-commerce pricing is regarded as an operation, or let's say maybe an operation that nobody likes, maybe, but actually it's one of the most effective conversion rate optimizers, guys, because imagine that you are generating a lot of visits to your web shop, to your products, and then all those visitors, browsing through your products would be also, simultaneously browsing through products, exact same product on different tabs on their browsers. So if you don't have the, attractive price on your product page, most of those visits will be ending up with abandonment. So they won't be adding those products into their cart. So they will be exiting your product page. So your conversion rates will be almost zero. But if you really apply smart competitive pricing, when such a visitor opens your page, opens your product page, he or she will be comparing your price versus your competitors and find out that you really offered them an attractive price, and voila, they will add their product into their carts, and then you will kind of shoot targets with your marketing weapon, new marketing weapon, which is smart competitive pricing. So I really thank you for watching this presentation. So as I mentioned, this had been my third e-commerce day presentation. I would really like to be with the Omniconvert guys on the fourth one, and with you guys watching now. And if you really want to track your competitor prices automatically, and not only track your prices, but apply these strategies that I mentioned here, please visit pricing.com and try our software for free for 14 days now. So you can just visit, add your products, see the competitive data in live action, and then on top of that data, you can start applying all these strategies and see the pricing's effect on your sales and profit margins. So thanks for watching, guys. And I look forward to hearing your questions at the comment section now.
Hi, Burc. Thanks a lot for the breakdown in pricing. Thanks for sharing the different pricing categories and tactics that and strategies that businesses can use. I have two questions for you. One of them is, from your experience, what is the biggest mistake that companies, or let's say unexperienced companies, usually do regarding pricing?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so would you like to go with the second one, or should I answer this first?
No, it's okay. I will follow up after that.
Okay, so as I mentioned, when we think about competition in general, we think of competition as being the kind of most attractive one. So we obviously want to beat our competition, right? So we want to be better than our competition. Yeah. And the most dangerous action in e-commerce is actually not taking care of your costs and always trying to be minimum in the market. So this is the kind of business killer in e-commerce, I can tell. I think 50% of bankrupt e-commerce companies, this is a number that I'm making up, by the way. I don't really rely on any statistics, but I really believe this in my heart. I think 50% of failure in e-commerce is coming from imbalance in costs and the profit margins. So companies are not taking care of their costs, and they're always trying to be competitive, and they're always trying to be minimum, but they really be minimum unnecessarily, in all their products. Say they don't really make any profit at all, but they pile up their sales figures. Say they kind of think that they are increasing their market valuation and stuff, but they are not really running a profitable business. So when they reach to number maybe like $1 million of sales and revenue, they notice that they only had this revenue for much more than a cost. So the major thing that we would like to emphasize is that competitive pricing should be applied in a smart way. So it can also give you the opportunity to increase your prices. So it can also give you the chance to compare yourself versus the market and notice that you have some cost advantages at a particular product because of your supplier relationship. Maybe you really buy a certain brand at a really low unit cost versus your competitors. So you should be bringing those products to your storefront. You should be spending more on adverts for those particular products where your profit margins are higher. So to sum up, people are really messing up with being competitive, Albert. So they should keep in mind that they are running a business. So this is not a school project or something. So this is a business which should be profitable. So, but they are losing the track of the major part of the profits, which is costs, and they are decreasing their prices regardless of their costs, and they are losing the game. This is the biggest mistake I can tell.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for the insight with this answer. And the second question is, so you made a breakdown of different types of pricing based on a different strategy. My question is, for e-commerces that don't have a lot of experiences and know-how, how they should know in which one of those pricing strategies or categories they should use when they set up their pricing.
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned in my presentation, those are not mutually exclusive strategies. So you shouldn't be picking one of them and applying that because it's not working that way. So you should always know all those strategies and you should be mixing them up in your game. Mm-hmm. But the right question to ask is actually about your customers and about your market in general. You know, I mentioned the unique selling proposition part in my presentation, which is mm-hmm. actually trying to figure out who you are as a business. So this is a really, existential question in terms of business. So you should be really honest with you, and you should really tell whether you are selling a dream product that cannot be found elsewhere, or you are kind of retailing a commodity product, but still you are delivering it fast, you are delivering it safely, and you are a trustworthy retailer and stuff. So some companies kind of don't really do that. So they think that they are unique, so they are a great company, but they're actually selling products that can be found elsewhere, and they are not really differentiating on price, and they are not really differentiating on quality. So they really sell stuff very expensively, so they don't really make any sales or profits. But on the contrary, some companies are also undervaluing themselves. So they have an amazing product, they have an amazing service, but they are still trying to be very cheap. So they are really undervaluing themselves, even though they would be making same amount of units sold, even if they increase their prices. So companies are like humans, because companies are run by people. So there's always a humanistic side in business. So people should always sit down on their table every day and know what they are doing. So what kind of business they are. So are they a company that cannot be found elsewhere, or are they a company that can be found elsewhere but doing things differently? So this is the first existential question to be asked before jumping on the right pricing strategy mix, I would say.
Great. So really insightful question there that you just raised, and I hope people that don't have this figured out will find their answers, their specific answers. Mm-hmm. Burc, thanks a lot for the presentation. Thanks a lot for the insights and sharing this knowledge. Mm-hmm. And if you guys need any help with pricing, then pricing is definitely the place to go and experience.
Exactly.
And try it out. Yeah.
Thank you, Kadir.
Perfect. So, guys, if you have any more questions, then just ask them in the chat. Otherwise, we're gonna have one more presentation in approximately 5 minutes.
Okay.
So have a great evening, Burc, and talk with you soon.
You too, Albert. See you on the 4th International E-commerce Day, hopefully.
Perfect. Perfect.
Ciao, ciao. Bye, bye.
Bye.